Sup? Welcome to the Tedeschi Trucks podcast. This is episode number 19, and I am Adam Choit. To follow this show, it's at Tedeschi Trucks Podcast on Instagram, and I'm at Adam Choit on Instagram if you want to follow me too. And of course, this is an unofficial podcast for TTB. I'm just a fan. And if you're listening to this, I'm guessing there's a good chance that you might be too. If you listen to this show weekly, I'm going to try to come up with some new things to say at the intro. Maybe I'm going to, instead of like writing out sentences, I'm going to like bullet point maybe certain things. And then I'll speak more off the cuff and it'll be less boring. But I don't know. Maybe there's new people here. I'm guessing there is some new people here and they haven't heard my whole spiel. But anyway, be sure to subscribe as well and give this show a positive review on iTunes. Those things are greatly appreciated as well. Anyway, today's guest is Tedeschi Trucks band fan Larry James. Born and raised and still residing in Charleston, South Carolina, this family man tells me all about discovering Zeppelin, The Doors, jam bands, playing a little guitar himself, and much more. This live concert lover also talks about seeing young Derek in the South, the impact TTB playing at 2010 Crossroads had on him, and just how talented and personable the band is. Early on, some crickets and cat meows set the scene, so to speak, but either way, this episode is some high-quality audio content, in my opinion. Anyway, let's just get into it. Here's Larry James. So it's good to see you today, Larry James. Thanks for joining me on the Zoom.
Thank you for having me. This is a pleasure.
Cheers. We can toast. I see you. What do you got? A beer? You got your coffee there? What is that?
This is beer. I'll just say beer.
You can do it. Cheers. I got my coffee.
Cheers.
I'm 3 hours earlier than you on the West Coast. Not that would be an excuse for me to not drink.
Well, it's after 8. My kids are in bed. So,
how old are your kids?
I've got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Yeah. So they're not up drinking with you tonight.
Not tonight. Usually they want to, but I told them I had a meeting tonight, and so okay, Dad, we'll go to bed. So
yeah. Well, tomorrow's Friday. It's the party night of the week, I guess.
Pizza movie night, it's our go-to on Fridays. In fact, with our schedule being basically homebound all the time, we have to reinvent ourselves.
Yeah, but you're hanging in there, you and your family, for the most part, doing okay?
Yeah, we are. It's a crazy year, and we have to be very fortunate about our health and just having the time to reflect on what matters, like family. So
yeah,
I think it's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Why don't we get into it? And you can tell me a little bit about your background and your life, especially, your music life and music history. You grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, you were telling me, and that's where you are now, born and raised. What do you remember maybe about like the early days of growing up in Charleston as a youngster in elementary school or even younger? What music jumps out at you? I'll kind of let you tell your early story and jump in here and there.
Sure. Well, I was born in Charleston, and Charleston's a really great town. I don't know if you've ever been there, but I have not. It's a historic town. So it was founded in the early 1700s, and it prospered through the 1900, all the way through the 19th century, through the Civil War. And so a lot of the town itself is a historic town. And I grew up in the downtown area. So I grew up in historic homes my whole life. And it was small streets and, crowded areas with a lot of friends around, ride my bike around, and just, a lot of people interacting. It's a good town. Well, it was a good town. Now it's kind of found out through Condé Nast being the #1 location in the world to visit. But, it comes with being a great city. So,
yeah, it sounds like Charleston though was sort of an idyllic place to grow up.
Yeah, it is. It's a town that has a lot of charm. People are very friendly here. There's great restaurants. And
that's okay if the cat's meowing.
Okay.
Do you feed her? You feed them? Is it dinner time? They always want to eat.
They do. She's just bugged out because she's staying inside because of the rain, and she wants to be pet or catered to. So
with me too. Everybody wants attention.
even the crickets, right? So
yeah, crickets outside, the cats inside. It's all good. But what about early maybe music memories? Did you play instruments when you were really young? What were your family playing music around the house? Friends, family? What kind of jumps out at you about like early in your life?
My family did not play any music directly. I'm actually the closest thing to music in my family was a distant relative, Fudd Livingston, who was a jazz musician in the 1920s, I think. It was one of my great cousins, if you will, like 10th cousin or whatever. So that's the only thing I've got to claim to. But I played guitar a little bit in high school and just learned basic chords. And I just kind of learned how to play them and just was kind of like a closet player. I didn't really seek lessons or anything like that, but I appreciated it. So
did you play in a band or with other people at all?
No, just kind of, down the hall, a guy would strum and I would be like, oh yeah, let's play a little bit. And that's it. No bands, no formal, like I said, I learned about 6 chords and that was it.
And no one in your family, other than this sort of distant relative from years ago, played instruments or sang or anything like not really, you didn't come from really a musical family.
No,
in terms of
not
performing.
At all. We had to beg my parents to put on the radio, and I didn't have a huge, religious background, but my folks really didn't come home and crank up the stereo. It was, they were okay for us to, as kids, to listen to music and whatever we wanted to, but my influences came mostly from my peers, my friends at the time, and their older siblings.
Did you have siblings, did you say?
Yeah, I had 2. I had 2 sisters, and they were older, and they always would play me stuff. Like when they were growing up, it was the Police and U2 and a lot of late 80s, mid 80s stuff. So stuff that I actually liked.
Yeah, is that similar to what your friends were playing as well, and what your peers were playing? Just whatever, sort of rock, pop rock, whatever's sort of popular in the 80s, so to speak.
Kinda, yeah. But I also had friends that had older brothers that liked to really hang out, if you understand, and they would listen to the Grateful Dead and Led Zeppelin and The Doors and all the heavier stuff that, it didn't really appeal to my sisters at the time until they got to college. But I particularly remember one friend of mine's older brother, like making us sit down and listen to Pink Floyd. And it was like, at the time I thought, well, this is okay. I liked like the greatest hits of Grateful Dead or Fleetwood Mac or whatever, that appealed to me at first, but then I learned, oh gosh, it goes beyond this, or this is a great song with these other songs on the original album. So I learned to listen a little bit more closely to what he was trying to influence us on.
I'm guessing your discovery of sort of these classic rock bands and sort of coincided around the same time you started playing guitar in your I guess teens, 14, 15. Was it something like that?
Yeah, I'd say it was like 14, 15. Yeah, I could never really play what I was listening to. I wasn't that good, and I'm still not that good. But what really I thought was really cool about the guitar is that I could like hit a note and then put my fingers on 2 other strings, not really knowing what the note was, and hearing a different sound that it actually made sense. So I put the 2 and 2 together, and I'd make up almost like a song without any kind of lyrics, but just about the vibrations and the noise of it. And that appealed to me more than actually trying to play, a song or learn a song.
Is there a more versatile instrument than guitar? Especially, I mean, even an acoustic guitar, especially just alone, like, is there anything that's more versatile? You can play lead, you can play solo, songs, you can bang on the guitar, different styles.
Bang on it. Yeah.
Different genres.
You can just
it's an accompanying instrument. Yeah. I feel like it's the most versatile instrument.
I agree. I think I was doing just like harmonics with it the other day, just to boom, boom, just to hear that vibration, and play it for my daughter. And she was like, that's really cool. Even though, again, I didn't know what I was doing, but I just wanted to show her the vibration. And I really got a lot out of that. That was
So
pretty
you
cool.
still play. So you still play, it sounds like, even though you're like, I played. You said I played in high school, but it sounds like you still have a guitar and you're still.
Oh yeah, I still have the same
around.
guitar.
Wow, that's good. That's cool.
I mean, that's the thing. I don't feel like I graduated playing wise to go out and spend $800 for a Gibson or whatever. You know, I've got a local made guitar here in South Carolina, and it's fine, and it makes me happy. I take 15 minutes and strum a few chords, and then I put it down, and then I walk away. And I mean, I'd love to be able to sit on a stage and sing a song to somebody one day, but I mean,
do you sing? Have you been practicing singing? Did you ever mess around with that?
I did for my daughter like 2 days ago.
I was going to say that if you have kids, you're probably going to, sing to them, for them. That inspires you too.
Yeah. I mean, I try, but I don't have a good voice, and I mean, I'm not trained, and I'm not a naysayer. I'm just maybe during the later part of this year, if we're still locked down and there's not a lot going on, maybe I'll pick up some lessons or online lessons or something.
Yeah, I play a little guitar too, and I mess around a little bit with singing. I mean, I don't practice regularly enough, but like,
sure.
I feel like anyone could learn to sing in tune and carry a tune. It's not like everyone's going to be amazing, but people say they're tone deaf. I can't sing. I think I think of it more as a muscle. If I could sort of improve even slightly, like I think anybody can. It's people just don't dedicate the time. Just got to match the note. You just have to match the note that you're playing on the guitar, on the piano, and if you're singing the same note, you're singing in tune. Obviously, there's style and skill and different levels and what makes somebody stand out and be great. But competence can be achieved by, I think, quite many people. Right, for sure.
I remember in high school, I sat down with two guys that actually really could sing and play, and we were just friends. And I was like, well, I didn't really try to play with them, but we did try to like sing together. And I was like, well, let's try a Crosby, Stills and Nash song, because that's three guys singing. And like the first take, I walked out of the room. I was like, wow, that sounded terrible. So I think that crushed my dreams of ever truly singing. But
yeah, those guys are great harmonizers, though. That was a tough task, I think, for you guys.
The bar was set very high for myself, so I had to cool it back a little bit. So anyway.
But it seems like, some of the 80s stuff and a lot of the classic rock stuff, that's kind of what you were listening to in high school, what you were into. What about even, I don't know where your life went, but we could kind of talk about where you thought your life would be going career-wise, or what happened in college, and what kind of musically what you were into as your life continued. Kind of speak on that.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'll just talk about like my experiences with music in general, like live music. I remember my sisters trying to sneak me into a couple of bars when I was in high school, and a couple of local bands playing and seeing that kind of stuff. And it really clicked on that was special, going to a dance, if you will, with the band being there. I could really see the power of how someone could stand up, play an instrument, and just, turn everyone's attention towards what was coming out of the speaker, And so early on in high school, I didn't get a lot of those chances, but I did go see some big concerts. And I just remember one of them was actually Fleetwood Mac, and it was pretty cool. And I was like, man, this is my parents' music for the most part, but I liked it. But it was just amazing to be in the presence of these rock stars. We had like really good seats, and Stevie Nicks came out, and she just commanded the stage. And this is like a reunion tour, like 92 or 93. And even so, it was pretty amazing to see that. And then I saw Clapton in 91 for the Journeyman tour. Like, it must have been the same time period. So 91 for the Fleetwood Mac show. But that show, it was like, whoa, okay, these are the songs I liked, and this is the dude performing it, and here it is in my face, telling me like, this is amazing. So I got hooked very quickly.
On going to concerts, on Eric Clapton even more so, or just all the above?
Yeah, I mean, it was like listening to Eric Clapton. Yeah, I've been listening to Clapton, but I didn't really, it's like putting on his tune and then that's it. You drop it, but then you have an opportunity to go see him live. You're like, okay, he just played Cream, Blind Faith, his own material, all the stuff. And I think I had just gotten his Crossroads box set. And so I had all that material with me and I was like, man, listening to it, and it just kind of blew me away when he played it all live.
Yeah.
Just that tour was pretty awesome too. And then, in college, I had full access I went to college in 1993 through 1997. So I got hooked into everything that was touring then, most of the jam band stuff in the Southeast.
Right.
So that's actually when I first saw Derek. I saw him in a bar in 93. And the next year he came out and played with Widespread Panic, an outdoor show in Charleston in February. And I swear it was like he was barely, it was in 94. So I don't know how old he was then.
He's probably 20 something, like young.
Yeah. I mean, I think
it was 20.
Yeah, because I saw him in the bar. I was like, I know he wasn't old enough to even drink. That was the running gag, but he was killing it on guitar and no one cared. So, it's funny. You mentioned in your previous podcast about the guy knocking the guitar and the rowdy, right, knocking his SG. And I was like, yeah, I think that was one of the shows I went to.
Oh, really?
So, not that particular one, but, I definitely saw him at a rowdy small club. And, people would really, really support him in these small clubs because it was such a phenomenon to see a young guy just shred on guitar and play the Allman Brothers and things like, things that blues songs that everyone loved. So
yeah, he was born in 79. You probably heard me typing earlier.
Oh, no.
I should know that. That's like some of the stuff I feel like I should know and like not even have to like look up. But I'm not claiming to be an expert on the band or anything like that. I'm not a walking reference book per se, but hardcore fan for sure. So if he was born in 79 and you saw him in like 93 or something,
yeah,
that makes him 23, 24 years old. But he was a young looking.
Oh, right. So,
23, 24 as well. So it probably looked like a teenager, clean shaven and all that.
Right. And, it's possible that, he was just so young that people thought that, like you're saying. And I mean, and he had been coming to Charleston playing bars here since he was that young. Probably whenever he started first touring, he probably got gigs here locally. I wasn't tapped in at the time. So, but really I did go to college here at the College of Charleston and, a lot of bands that came through, he was already touring with like Widespread Panic and Colonel Bruce and, some of these other bands that knew him in the Southeast and he hung out with, they would come through here. We'd always drive, 4 or 5 hours to see those bands too.
Damn.
So yeah, I mean, I probably have spent the past, 25 years seeing those bands. So not Colonel Bruce, obviously, but Widespread Panic and Fish and String Cheese, all that stuff. Yeah.
You're just a hardcore music fan. Even beyond, of course, TTB and Derek and all that.
Well, yeah. I mean, sure. I've enjoyed live music my whole life. I mean, as a old enough to be able to get in the bar, I didn't do it on my own. I had friends that would influence me to go out there and do it and go with them. I mean, I remember a bunch of us packed in my friend's station wagon. We drove up to RFK Stadium to see the Dead in 93 at RFK Stadium with 80,000 people. And it was the summer of my freshman year in college. It was unbelievable. I never thought I'd do something like that early,
How many concerts have you been to, would you say? Hundreds, dozens, thousands?
No, probably not 1,000, but I mean, I've seen Widespread over 100 times, Fish close to 100 times. I saw it. I try to go to a show somewhere around, I mean, not now and not since children, but
right.
I mean, my life has changed dramatically after I got married, but before marriage, I would probably go see, I don't know, 40 concerts a year.
Yeah.
At least.
That's a good amount. I mean, if you love music, to see a show every other week is not really that insane. And if you're living in Charleston, which is not a huge city, of course, but I have a feeling that you could find at least live music almost every night. Is that true in Charleston or no?
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, it's not the same ratio. I lived in San Francisco for 5 years, so I could understand what you're coming from, where you could go see 3 different shows in one night, if you wanted to. And I remember that one New Year's was like, there was a show at the Warfield, the Fillmore, Bill Graham Auditorium, and in Oakland. All 3 New Year's shows. You could literally have done it all. But Charleston offers, 1 or 2 shows every month that are pretty good, and you get like 4 or 5 a year. That's pretty solid. National tour, internationally touring act.
Sure.
There's a lot of good local musicians. You remember Shovel and Ropes that were on the Wheels of Soul last year?
I don't recall.
Okay, they're just the duo of the 2 people played with them. They're from here, or they live here now. So there's a lot of musicians are finding Charleston out as a great place to hang out. And one of the guys from Humphreys McGee lives here too. So there's a lot of good musicians.
A scene and a good hotbed even for that type of music, for jam music. I was going to ask you, what appeals to you most about sort of jam bands? And we'll get into TTB, I'm sure, and sort of what you're listening to, if anything different than jam bands and classic rock in the early 2000s until TTB started to come along. But what appeals to you most about like jam bands and that type of music? And then we'll discuss what type, if TTB is considered a jam band or not.
Well, that's I'm sure a point of contention even with the musicians. I think what appeals to me is just the living beyond the 3-minute song,
right.
knowing that an artist can take his craft beyond what standard radio is trying to pare down. So jam music, I'm obviously gravitating towards rock and roll jam music, but you can say that jazz is jam band or
right.
bluegrass is jam band. And it doesn't really have to be rock, but I mean, that was I love the electric guitar, like the sound of it. And, and being, a lot of my friends like that. And so it was kind of popular music in the circles I was with. And so you could just hear it. And then listening to one artist, let's say the Grateful Dead, you got to be influenced by bluegrass and Jerry's bluegrass stuff. And then there's a lot of spin-offs from jam band music too.
Right.
And so, I mean,
no doubt.
The good thing about Tedeschi Trucks is they have 12 people that you could pick their brains and see what their influences are. And so maybe you could be influenced by what Kevy likes, or what, even what Gabe Dixon puts out. His stuff is like, it's pretty mellow, but it's soulful as shit. Sorry, language. But
it's all good. It's a compliment as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I think I like Tedeschi Trucks so much because they do have that 3-minute song that is appealing. You're not sitting there going, okay, watching the clock. It's not a Freebird jam. So forever, but, they have some great songs where they can stretch it out, and,
they do. Yep.
They do. And I love that. I mean, when they get going, like on like I Want More or The Storm, if you listen to the songs, I mean, there's nothing in the world going to stop that sound. It's the largest sound.
Yeah, and there's new things every time they play these songs live. There's something new in it, whether it's someone in the band playing something in a slightly different style, or a different instrument in a particular part of someone gets a different soul. I mean, I think that's sort of what appeals to me about TTB, and I sort of see them as a band that jams rather than a jam band per se. But the fact that you're getting so many different instruments, it keeps things fresh and spontaneous for them, and probably for the fans like myself and how I'm describing. I imagine, other people feel that way.
Sure. The one thing jam bands get pegged at is that they just are cover bands. I have a mutual friend that doesn't like one band because they play a lot of covers, and they're like, well, that's just a cover band. They don't have really enough their own material to play. And I kind of took offense to that because I was like, well, I mean, it wasn't towards TTB, but I think when bands cover music, it's kind of like a tribute. And I did some research to kind of get ready for this podcast and thinking about what covers TTB has done. And I realized, I don't know if you realize this or not, but almost every cover they do has been an occurrence of what's happened in their history. So, for example, like they played Leaving Truck by Taj Mahal. They play it all the time, right? Pretty familiar song. They play it, you don't think about it. It's a killer song, great jam. But they haven't really started playing it as TTB until they had Taj Mahal as a guest at the Beacon in like 2016 or something, or 15. And then after that, I can see it. It's more of like a tribute to him, saying, "Hey, we love your music." And and if you see other things like, not everything, but there's a lot of examples out there that you look back on. And it's not just them playing to the fans, playing what we want to hear. It's playing songs that are tributes to the people that they're influenced by, and that has they've either played with, and it's a way of kind of giving back. I mean, obviously, the songs they play, the Allman Brothers songs is a kind of reflection on the Greg and all the. I mean, look at the Mad Dog set. I mean, that whole thing was a tribute to Leon Russell and the others.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the choices that they make with the music, done by Derek, done by the whole band, are done for very specific reasons at particular moments in time, for sure. Like there's no accidents with the set lists. I'm sure a lot of thought goes into that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like they played the Tom Petty tune after Tom passed.
Yeah, you don't know how it feels.
Yeah, and I caught that in Charleston a couple of years ago, and it was fantastic. And at the time, I was like, "Oh man, this must be for Tom Petty," and it was. It was like it's a recognition of the people and the musicians that made an influence on them. And sometimes they don't have the opportunity to play with them, so they play the honor tribute, for a few years, and then they let it go. And I think that's killer, as a band. Instead of just playing like I love Michael Jackson, don't get me wrong, but if they just want to play like the Beat It to make the crowd dance, that's kind of like, it's not really a tribute. It's just kind of like throwing it to the fans, which I'm sure that our fans are, well, some of people might stand up and dance, but
yeah,
a lot of people would be
that
confused.
Debate now. Yeah, no. I kind of talked about this a little bit on the episode, where I talked about, I think, covers or whatever. How there's a reason they sort of tend to stay away from, super duper iconic songs for the most part, because I guess it's kind of hard to make it your own, and they kind of lean towards classic songs and great songs, but maybe not the epic, super popular Billie Jean or anything like that. Like that, there's a reason that you don't hear Layla, I think, played at like every TTB set versus like, maybe a slightly lesser known Clapton song, but still something great, of course, than known to all of us, the fans, obviously.
Right. I mean, I think Layla would be amazing to see, but I think it'd be a hard thing to tackle for just Susan. And, there's a lot of guitar work in that. And they had 4 guitar players up there when they played it at Lock-In. I mean,
I at least 3.
At least 3, yeah.
At least 3.
So, I think that album, they've kind of taken out of it what they can on the road after the fact, with Bell Bottom Blues and I Am Yours. I mean, think about, these are just kind of obscure songs on the album, and great tunes that that I love to hear in their repertoire, and it's awesome.
Yeah, no doubt. What about was there before? I mean, we've kind of already dove into TTB quite a bit, but I'm curious about how you kind of sort of discovered them. I know you saw Derek before, but what made how did you get connected to TTB specifically? And was there any other music that sort of was an inspiration to influence you? What were you were listening to? Either in the early 2000s, sort of between the late 90s and discovering TTB. Were you just continuing to see Fish and other jam bands? Was that kind of just continued throughout until you discovered TTB?
Well, I mean, in college and after college, which is, you're talking 97 through 2010. I mean, I would go see anything in that realm, in that genre. I mean, that I enjoyed, and still a lot of bands, and going through festivals and being influenced by new bands that you could see at these festivals. My TTB influence really came from a buddy of mine. Basically, I had a friend who put on the DVD for the Crossroads Music Festival for the Eric Clapton fundraising for his treatment center. Eric had so many guests on there, but Derek and Susan were one of them. And it was like the first year of TTB, but the band that played was not TTB. I mean, it was, but it wasn't the full band.
It was like Soul Stool Revival. A few guests have talked about this, but I remember it was Derek, Susan, Mike Madison, at least. It was, it's a combination of their bands.
There was,
I believe,
Tyler Greenwell was there. There was, Kevy wasn't there. There was no horn players. And anyway, the point is that he played the Midnight in Harlem, and I love that song, but that version for some reason just really stuck out to me. I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing. This is just not a blues band coming through, like a Allman Brothers spinoff here. This is actually something solid. And the way that video was shot with, panning to the crowd, and it's like a sunset, and Derek's just solo.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
I watched it this week and I still get goosebumps, and that doesn't happen very often with all the music I've seen. I mean, it's not just a guitar solo. It's the way Susan looks back over her shoulders, just laughing. It's like you could tell at that point, not really at that point, but you could tell in that year, it was clicking for them, and they understood this is something that's going to happen, and, it had been happening for years. I mean, Susan, they'd been married for a while, 10 years or so, and they both had amazing albums the years before, and she'd been playing with his band, Derek Trucks Band, for a while, on and off. And then they did Soul Stool Revival in 2007. So, it's nothing new for them, but I think with that crowd and that song, it was something that really pushed that whole, momentum forward.
It seems like it. And like I was kind of mentioning, Sean Roach, episode 3, mentions that very moment, that very DVD, that song Midnight in Harlem, being a very profound moment for him, where he was like, I'm all in on this band now, which is kind of similar to how you're describing. And he mentioned Kofi's keyboard being something that grabbed him as well. So it's not just Derek's guitar. It's not just a blues band. It goes way beyond that, and just so much happening right in that moment. And it was so early on. So I have a feeling that you two guys are not the only two people out there who this was a big moment for. Midnight in Harlem at Crossroads. Was it 2000?
2010, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was the year before Revelator came out. And I think that they had basically released both their albums the year and 2 years before, with Derek releasing Already Free in January 2009, and she doing Back to the River in 2008. So you have, they had those two projects already wrapped up, and both of them won basically Grammys. One got nominated, one of them won. They both got nominated for Grammys for their work. And I remember looking to an interview about Susan saying, we wanted to record with Soul Stool Revival, but they put it on hold for those two albums. So I think what came next, which was TTB after the fact, had been building with the Soul Stool revival and was a product of that. And, I've gone back to listen to some of those shows. They're very loose. There's a lot of covers. I mean, again, tributes, but
sure.
At the time, I think it was just kind of playing together and kind of getting a feel for how it would be as a band. And it's pretty awesome to know that these two superstars can come together and kill it like that.
Yeah, no doubt. Where do we kind of go from there? Like, when did you say you saw this the Midnight Harlem Eric Clapton Crossroads video?
It was in that fall. So whenever it was released, I think it was released in November.
So shortly thereafter you caught this.
Yeah.
After it was released. I gotcha.
So I listened to him like a couple times throughout the next couple of years. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to go see him. I was in Florida in grad school, and I still kicked myself saying I didn't go to the Wani music festivals that happened every year, where they would play every year up until I think, till they got their own stuff going. But it wasn't until 2013 I moved back to Charleston when I saw them the first time, and I had a front row seat, and I was so excited, and I got to see them for the Made Up Mind tour, and I was just blown away. It really, I understood how, again, how powerful that band is, especially in the front row. I mean, you can never experience it.
It's awesome. I have been very close a couple of times. I'm lucky to say that. But it's funny. I sometimes wander at shows a little bit because I like to see what's going on, listen to different perspectives, hear different sound from different places. And I have just as much fun in the last row, partying with people up in the balcony than I do front row. So it's definitely a good time.
Right. I'm obviously, with all the live music I've seen, I'm a mover and shaker. So, I mean, give me an open dance floor any day, but I understand, it's for everyone. You kind of go with the flow. When you go into the theater shows, it's a theater. So, but after the 2013 show, I became a hardcore listening to their stuff on archive and downloading shows, and really kind of just listened to them as like a number 1 or 2 band from then on out. I've seen them a couple more times after that, but I got married, had children, and I'm now in my 40s, so I'm not necessarily driving 5 hours anymore to see 100 shows a year. So I would love to. Maybe when my kids leave the house, hopefully they're touring, and I'll be able to do that.
Yeah.
So,
do the kids play instruments at all or anything like that?
I mean, we'll have music night where we just throw a bunch of stuff on the floor and they pick it up and make noise.
They're young still.
They're young still. And,
Derek was young. Derek was young too. I mean,
true that.
Susan too.
Yeah. My son does play piano. He started playing last year, so he's picking it up a little bit. Yeah. My daughter's learned a couple little songs on guitar, just one string, kind of, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and that kind of stuff, stuff we can look up on YouTube. It's a great resource for kids, but it's hard for her to hold the string. She's 6. So
yeah, it'll take time. Stick with it.
Maybe I'll give her a slide, and that'll be easier for her.
There you go. Well, that's it. If you have smaller hands, that's kind of, I think, what Derek said, what's been talked about, it's harder to fret the guitar when you have small hands and when you're young. Did you ever have a chance to, either at this first show or any other time, to meet Derek, Susan, any of the band, take pictures, say hello, autographs, anything like that?
Not at this show. I did last year, actually. It's kind of an amazing story, actually. I had a conference that I attended in Mississippi, and they were playing the very next night in Dallas, Texas. And so I'd kind of planned to go to the show, but I wanted to do it as a last minute thing. I didn't know if it was a 5.5 hour drive from my conference center to the show. And I had called the venue because it was sold out. And I said, are there any released tickets? And a woman answered the phone, and she was the manager. And she said, you know what? If you can find a ticket on Ticketmaster and get in, I'll get you a good seat, you know? And I was like, okay. And I looked and I called and I went on Ticketmaster, and I guess they had released tickets. And so I bought a balcony ticket, and then I said, whatever, I'm going to do it. And I got in the car at like 9:00 in the morning, drove from Mississippi all the way across Texas, and went to the first night of the Dallas Theater, the Majestic Theater show, and met the manager in the front area. And it was a beautiful theater. It is a beautiful theater. And she took me to a nice seat on the floor, and I had a great show and just blown away. Great show. Met some very nice people. And then after the show, I decided to walk around back to see if anyone was coming out of the back, if I could say hello. I ended up seeing Elizabeth Lee, and she was very nice. We talked for a little bit, and Tyler Greenwell came out and said hello to him. And then at the end, I waited. It was almost like an hour I waited, but Derek and Susan came out of the backstage area. I guess people at VIP had been mingling with them.
Probably doing meet and greets backstage first before they come out, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it was like approaching midnight or 1:00 at this point. And it was probably like 50 degrees. It was pretty chilly. And so I was like, I don't know if I want to wait anymore. But I was like, if they do come out, I don't want to miss this, you know? So I hung out, and they came out, and it was like a big buzz because like you could see all the roadies and stuff like kind of getting their gear and getting the bus ready and, you know, kind of prepping. And their, I guess their manager or whatever was sitting there, and he was like, they'll come out, just say hi and don't bug them, you know, because they're on the way in, you know, out to the bus. And they came out and they stopped and talked to every person. It was like 5 of us at that point, but they really spent about a minute to 30 seconds with each person. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, this is after a show. It's been 2 hours almost after the show ended, and they're still, none of these people paid, and we're standing on the side of the street. They paid a VIP pass, but then they spent time to talk to all these people. One guy actually got on the bus with him to play music with Derek. And wow. I guess he invited him on the bus. It was a guy who was playing.
Maybe they knew each other or something like
that. Maybe he had mentioned something like, oh, you remember you told me that you're going to show me that thing? And he's like, yeah. Come on up. And, you know,
wow.
He started getting on the bus, and the security guy was like, hey, you can't do that. And Derek's like, he's with me. It was pretty cool. But I ended up just shaking hands with Derek. And I actually, this is kind of crazy, but it was cold, and we were flopping the pen back and forth, and I handed it back to him. I ended up jabbing him in the hand accidentally, and he kind of like was stunned by it. And it's embarrassing to me even talk about that, but it was a moment I was like, oh my God, I almost damaged the hands.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you mess up Derek Truck's hands, like that's like, I don't know what it's like. I'll think of a good metaphor like 3 hours from now for that.
Right.
But.
Well, I'll tell you, I wouldn't have, you know, obviously put myself out there in a podcast and have rioting people towards South Carolina.
Right.
So,
go on.
I was just going to say that I ended up talking to Susan the longest, and she was so gracious. And I told her I drove from South Carolina to be there, and she and I got a photo together, and very humble, amazing people. They didn't have to do that. They could have just, you know, beelined it from the stage doors to the bus, and it was cold. And she was like, you guys shouldn't be out here. It's cold out here. And we're like, come on.
This is everyone's experience with them. It seems like every fan who's met them, interacted with them, myself included, has nothing but positive things to say about them. They're nice, they're gracious, they're attentive, they give everyone their time. And what's amazing is that, like, I'm sure they're human. I'm sure they argue with each other. I'm sure they have problems. I'm sure they argue with their record producers and managers, and even with each other. They have, nothing's perfect, and there's drama here and there. But not only do you never hear anything about that stuff, nothing ever comes out, you never hear any, like, they never have any drama with the public. You know what I'm saying? There's never, not one minor offense, negative thing have I ever, and not just that even, it's just that it's overwhelmingly positive, with how friendly they are.
I agree with you. I agree. And I think a lot of it stems from like where they came from. I mean, and who influenced them. I mean, I guess at least for Derek, I mean, he was shouted. I mean, he had the whole Allman Brothers thing kind of looming over him, and Greg pulling him aside saying, "Don't fuck up your life." And, you know, to be thrust into all that at a young age for both of them, because she had all these influences early on, you know, Buddy Guy and all these people that took her under their wings. I mean, I guess you're just grateful, and you're happy you have the talent, and you're happy that these superstars have taken you under their wing, and then you have this legacy to carry on. And I think, you know, why be shitty to your fans? You know, it's not humbling to just live in your own ego. It's more humbling to be welcoming and accept people that accept you.
Yeah, no doubt. And not only are they great to their fans, they go beyond. Like, I feel like they definitely go beyond. And it's interesting to hear you talk about, you know, how Greg Allman said, "Don't go down this path to Derek," or whatever, whether he said it in those exact words or not. But it seems like they had a lot of good influences, Derek and Susan, individually and collectively, you know, musically, you know, in their life. But it's not just they had, like, you know, people it seems like they've had people who've done it the right way and led maybe more the straight and narrow path to inspire them, but also they've had people to learn from others' mistakes and sadly to say, you know, tragedies, even with, you know, all the musicians who've had, you know, passed too soon over the years for various reasons.
Yeah. I also think that it helps that they're married. I mean, going into business, if you will, with your spouse and carrying on that responsibility and all that. I don't have that personal experience, but I can imagine you want to be very grateful that you have that experience, and your fan base is the people that support you to make that happen, instead of not seeing your spouse for 6 months because he's on the road with his band, or your kid's not seeing the mom because she's on the road for that long. And, you know, even though the kids are older, but I guarantee it right now, it doesn't matter how old their kids are. They're getting the time in their lives. I can only imagine looking back in their history this past week. I mean, the past 20 years has been nuts for those two people. I mean, for Derek and Susan and all the musicians that they're around. I mean, they've done nothing but produce. I mean, and toured. I mean, 90 shows a year, basically, for the past 10 years, plus their albums that they did before that. I can only imagine what this year has been like for them.
Yeah, I was talking to, I think Derek talked about this on Eric Krasno's podcast, and Ori Naftali of Southern Avenue mentioned it to me. This is like the first time a lot of these musicians have been off in God knows how long, in 20 years. Like, people, since high school, a lot of these people have been in bands and touring and constantly playing, other than maybe recording. You had to take some time off in between a tour, but nothing beyond, you know, a couple of months or so, or if even that, like,
right.
Have these experience, you know, these musicians had a break.
Right. And I can imagine, like, coming off a tour in like March and going back in June and having that 6 weeks, you're not relaxed. I mean, for what I'm not going to tell you what I do, but I travel sometimes.
CIA.
That will basically like that. But I'm an engineer, more or less. No, I'm an engineer.
You have a file on me or what? Oh, no.
But I travel sometimes for my job, and when there's travel and then there's a period of time where you have to travel again, you're not relaxed. You're not yourself. You know, you go through the motions. It's like you come home, you have a week downtime, you have a week to compress what your life is all about again. And then it's like picking up and going again. So I imagine now they're really, really relaxing, maybe stressing a little bit with the responsibility of having 22 employees and no tour. But I really hope that they take this time to really have a reflection about, you know, the past 20 years and how much they've done for us fans and for the music industry. And
I think they seem to be doing so. I haven't listened yet, but I know Derek also did another podcast the other day where I saw I think it was on like a whiskey like tasting podcast or something like that.
It was a bourbon.
That looked like a pretty laid back, reflective type conversation that they were having. I got to check that out.
I listened to a little bit of it, and that was something I didn't know either about him. That he goes out and buys bourbon to hold on to and taste, and why not? It's part of the Southern tradition to have a good stock of bourbon. So, obviously not as good as his stock, but I mean, you could see the wall of bourbon behind him.
Yeah, I didn't know that Derek was such a hardcore bourbon fan. It seems like they got hobbies and they have lives beyond music and even beyond family. I know he likes fishing and they're sports fans and they have a lot of they're well-rounded people. It seems like Derek.
Yeah, his interview with the Jacksonville Jaguars promoter guy was unbelievable. He was dropping names of recruits and people that, rookies and, all that. I mean, talk about, and then
they're into it.
Ticket holder. Yeah. He's really into it. Yeah. It's awesome. I love that. I mean, that's another thing that makes this band killer. They're just not like, they don't make the money and then go home and you never hear from them again. They're actually in the crowds and doing things, supporting local, other sports and events, I'm sure. So, I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, were those? Yeah, I was gonna ask. Were those? This is a sort of random question. Were those the Dallas show that you went to? Was that last year?
Yeah, it was last December or November.
Did Southern Avenue? I know the Southern Avenue opened up. Did they open up the show you went to? Or was that you went to the? It was an evening with TTB. The show you went to. Right. Yeah.
So that's why I drove, because.
You were worth it to see a whole show. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'd never had the opportunity. The other shows I've seen were Wheels of Soul or like one set theater gigs in Charleston, and which are all fantastic shows. But honestly, I had the opportunity to see an evening with, and I got in the car and drove 5 hours to do it, because I know, well, I'm very grateful now this year that I did it, but they don't play a lot of evening with shows in the Southeast. It's very rare. Maybe at the Fox Theater in Atlanta. I don't know of any really other place they've done one. Maybe Florida.
What is the thought behind it? Just because like a bigger city, you want to give a bigger show to just a bigger crowd and a more sort of. I know, like the Rhyme in Chicago, Beacon, San Francisco, like those are the Fox and Oakland. Those are sort of like big shows where you're going to get maybe more of the evening with versus the smaller venues or smaller towns. Does that have something to do with that?
I think, there's smaller towns. There's a big fan base here in the Southeast. So you probably spend your time, instead of parking at one spot, doing like 5 shows and, 5 cities over the course of 10 nights, opposed to 5 nights in one show and one city where,
gotcha.
And I do feel like, I can see how these residencies for a maturing band like TTB, I mean, I'm just going to say it, they're all in the 40s and older now. I mean, it's probably a lot easier to set up camp and let your fans make a vacation out of flying to Chicago or flying to DC or flying to Boston. I mean, if next time I can, I'm going to probably try to go to a Beacon show or an Orpheum show in Boston. It's just, I think that's easier for me, but I would not even thought about that in my 20s. I was a guy who drove around to each college university to see Widespread Panic or Fish.
Yeah,
I'd see that. So, I mean, I know it doesn't appeal to everyone, but I think that's kind of the wave of the future. You just, set up a residency and let your fans come to you.
Yeah, because it's like they're going for the hardcore fan. That's sort of like where they're going to make their money, like, so to speak, for lack of a better term, is like people willing to travel versus like, they're doing it the other way around, I guess.
Yeah. The one thing I would say, though, in that vein, I wish they would bring back the Sunshine Music Festival in Florida. I never went down there, but I think it'd be fun to do like a 2-night run in Florida in January, where you go to Boca Raton and then to St. Petersburg, Florida, St. Pete. And then, I think I bet it was a lot of fun for a lot of people years ago when they did that. So, and all those shows were really fantastic. So
I believe it.
Yeah.
What about any other, because I know I've taken up a lot of your time already, any other sort of notable memories? TTB kind of covered a lot, notable memories either personally or highlights of the band over the years that sort of jump out at you. And then I'll give you one more question after that and let you get the hell out of here.
No, keep it rolling.
We could do this all day.
Yeah. Really, I don't know. I just like the fact that, they keep it rolling. I hate to use that reference twice, but they've put out an album and they don't just sit there and tour behind the album. They actually intertwine the songs in their set list, and they, again, play a lot of killer tribute covers. And so the fans are engaged, just not in promoting the one album. They'll bring back a song that they had in their 2010, 11 years. And I really enjoy that as a fan. And
the spontaneity.
Yeah. And I mean, they could play, it's somewhat predictable, but not too much to the where, if you get it, you might recognize that, they play a song like Hear Me last year. They played Hear Me.
They finally had, right, of course, finally.
Yeah, that Macon show. And I was like, man, that is awesome. But why does it take this long? But, I don't care. They were playing other stuff.
We were trying to get it just right. That's what I read in the quote. I don't know. I think that's what Susan said. We've been working on getting it just right.
Just right.
No other song gave them such trouble live before.
Oh man. I don't see that possible, but yeah, maybe they did, so.
Well, it sounded great. The few times they've done it.
Yeah. I hope they keep it going with that one. And, also with and not to be a down, but I think the passing of Kofi really brought, are we going to continue this kind of into their realm? But they have so many other people on stage and they've invested so much time and energy, and it was crushing for fans and obviously for them, but to be able to incorporate other musicians like Carrie Frank for the year while Kofi was in the hospital, and then to bring on Brandon and Gabe to kind of keep the momentum going. I think it's so awesome to hear and be a fan of people to like keep the light going. I mean, I'm thrilled to be a fan. I love the fact that they have an interest in what we want, to hear and to keep it real.
No doubt. It sounds like you've had some already pretty cool TTB experiences in your life. But if you could have a sort of fantasy TTB experience, a dream, a goal, a plan, something like that, what would that look like? Is it to TTB to play a private show? Is it to just hang out with the band and have dinner? Is it to jam with Derek or something like that? What is the sort of what would be a dream scenario? Or maybe you don't have it. Maybe you just like, I don't know what I mean. Just want to go to as many shows as possible and just listen to them.
My dream scenario is to be hired on as a full-time archivist for the band.
And what would that entail?
Archiving their live music catalog and writing their history, being the person that's, the David Lemieux. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's the archivist for the Grateful Dead. And, he was a longtime taper, and, I'm not a taper, and I forgot to mention this, but I wanted to special thanks to all the tapers out there. There's several, like Ed Tyre, and I don't know if I'm saying your last name correct, but I apologize. And so Alex Leary is another one.
Yeah, Alex Leary and Ed Gendelman, I think is his name.
Yeah, and Ed, and then there's Yoshi.
And Sean does a lot of video. Sean Roach. Yeah, I try to thank them as much as possible when I see them post things in the groups and whatnot.
Without their efforts, none of this really. I mean, I'd love their albums, but it's the live show that kind of puts the glue and it makes it happen. I mean, it's I just want to thank them so much for that. Thank you. I hope you get one of those guys online one time and do an interview and kind of get their perspective. But getting back to my point. Getting back to my point, I just really, I think that'd be a dream job for me. I don't know. It might be boring to others, but I'm a statistics guy and I enjoy kind of looking at the set list and knowing their history, and, you know, being part of something like this is in the first 10 years is amazing. But I'd love to go to dinner with them. I'd love to just hang and, you know, have a beer too. I mean, I don't think I'd really enjoy playing music with them because I'd really suck.
Too much pressure. Yeah. Too much pressure. You become a spectator anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's really what it is. How about I clap along? Maybe I can do that. Yeah. Like I'll just
give me a tambourine.
Tambourine, yeah. Cool. Well, I definitely appreciate your time again. It's been a lot of fun. We covered a lot. Is there anything else or anything that you wanted to plug or promote or social media that you wanted to share? I know you're not. It doesn't sound like you're a public figure per se, but I'm
not. But I just want to, you know, shout out to everyone out there, you know, going through this crazy year, and, you know, hang in there. Use the time to be reflective of the things that you're grateful for, and, you know, be kind to your neighbor and your friends, and we'll all get through it once we're together as a nation. So
it's good to be reminded of those things.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from South Carolina, and our numbers are terrible here in the Southeast because I feel like there's a lot of separation and a lot of selfishness. And, you know, until we come together, I don't know what's going to happen. So,
oh boy, you know, what a year. What a fun time.
Yeah. It's
you're going to need another beer after this conversation. The kids are sleeping.
Yeah.
Enjoy, my friend. Enjoy, my friend. I appreciate it again. And we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Adam.
You got it. Later.
Bye.
So there you go. My conversation with Larry James. That was a lot of fun. Larry seems like a good guy, and I definitely appreciate him taking the time. Hopefully he never tries to stab Derek with a pen ever again. Anyway, hope everyone out there is hanging in there during this super fun 2020. For now, check out Tedeschi Trucks Podcast on Instagram. That's at Tedeschi Trucks Podcast. And of course, remember to tap subscribe or follow on iTunes, Spotify, or via whichever way you listen to the show. And again, positive reviews on iTunes are greatly appreciated. But I think that's about all I got for today. I appreciate you guys listening. I definitely appreciate the support. This is fun. This has been fun. This is fun for me, and I've enjoyed talking to all sorts of TTB people. But I gotta go. Later.